Wow. So I'm live. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to take a few seconds, wait for folks to jump in, and then I'm going to get started whether people are here or not. And let's have a chat. So just wanted to do a quick share. And so let's close this and say, hey guys, what's up? So I wanted to do this video, edit it beautifully, well, as beautifully as I can, because I'm not very good at that. And then upload it yesterday, but the weekend went by really quickly. And so here I am. I'm going to do a quick live. So I have my notes right here. And I wanted to talk to you guys about the proteins that I feed to my dogs. This is a question that I get a lot when it comes to feeding dogs a raw food diet. We're told that we need to feed variety. And a lot of people think that variety means that you need to feed 10, 15 proteins, which is completely not the case. And so me having access to 10 proteins, and I actually have access to far more than that, but 10 regular proteins, hey guys, is huge. And I know that I'm lucky. But there's a reason why I feed so many proteins. But before I get into the list, I want to tell you that if you are looking at that 10 proteins and going, oh my gosh, I need to go find more proteins, stop. I personally think that if you have 3 proteins happening, then you're good. I mean, of course, if you can add more, great. But for some people, they can't source that many, or they can't afford a lot. There's a lot going on in the world right now. And I'm being very careful with my budget. I don't know about you guys. So, it's not necessary to try and take on everything. When I first started feeding raw, every single time someone told me about a protein or have access to a protein, I spend way too much money, both on proteins and on supplements. And I just want to say first, not necessary. So let's get into my list. And so with each protein, I'm not going to tell you like the macro, micronutrients in each proteins. You guys need to look that stuff up yourself. But I will tell you why I feed the proteins to my dogs. I have 4 dogs, Rodrigo, Scout, Zoe, and Apollo. Rodrigo is going to be 11 in March. Scout and Zoe are 7, and Apollo is 2. He just turned 2 a couple weeks ago. Sydney, who was Rodrigo's sister and my baby girl, passed away in September of 2020 of hemangiosarcoma. So we're down from 5 dogs to 4 dogs. Heather says, I have 5 unless eggs is counted as a separate one, then 6. I actually do count eggs as a protein. I know a lot of people forget, but I do count eggs as a protein. Rhonda, I do want to get another dog. I don't have time for a puppy right now because even though I'm working from home, a puppy is so much work. And we already have 4 very active dogs that need lots of attention. So I can't do a puppy, but if a young dog all of a sudden needed a place, I would try my best to talk my partner, Johan, into letting us add a 5th dog to our family. So far, he's given me pushback because I've come across a couple of puppies. I know I just said I don't have time for puppies, but a couple of puppies. And my thought was that, well, usually if there's a puppy, there's a mom. So maybe we can bring the mom into our family. We're still working on it. In the meantime, I know this is a complete aside. We are building a dog wash room. So I'm really excited about that. Okay, so back to the proteins. The first main protein that I feed to my dogs is duck. Duck is the easiest one for me to get a hold of, and it's affordable. I order it through our local raw food co-op, and I order it by the case. So a case of duck feet, case of duck wings, case of duck necks, a case of duck frames. So I love duck, one, because Rodrigo, who has a series of food intolerances, he can't have chicken, and we'll cover chicken later. He can't have turkey. He can't have beef, which are the proteins that are the easiest for everyone to get. And so I ended up doing duck. I really think that our dogs should have not just poultry, but all, and then the ruminating animals, but also white meat and red meat. So that's why I have so much on my list and why I try to do variety. Ducks, since it's the easiest protein for me to get, my dogs eat duck all the time. And I knock on wood that no one has developed an intolerance to it, because someone told me once that if we feed our dogs too much of something, eventually they'll develop an allergy to it. And oh, I can't have that. So I use the duck wings as a base in all of my foods. A lot of the meat that I get is meat only. So I'm mixing up different things to create a nutritious diet. So all of my dog's meals are multiple proteins. So I use the duck wings as the bone. Even though there's meat there, it's 60-40, 60% meat, 40% bone. But that's where I get the bone from. Then I add in muscle meat and I add in organ meat. And I use a base mix by Dr. Harvey's called Paradigm to bring it all together, and boom, nutritious meal. So lots of duck happening in our house. That's the first protein. The second protein that I love, and it's another poultry, is quail. Quail is on the other end of the cost spectrum than duck. Quail is kind of expensive. And so I have one resource for quail, Columbia River, which is, I believe, down in Oregon. I order quail by the case, sometimes one case, sometimes 2 or 3 cases, because I like to keep it on hand. And the reason why is because this is another protein that Rodrigo does well on. I don't want to be a short order cook where I'm cooking multiple meals for each dog's, or mixing. But I also can't have, if I want to afford raw feeding, I can't have everyone eat at Rodrigo's level. So if I were to get quail from anywhere else, it would just be too expensive. But Columbia River is affordable, and so everyone gets quail. So those are the two birds that I get, and everyone does well on. The next protein that I love, but this one is crazy expensive here, and I don't know about you guys and where you live, but rabbit is insane. I mean, the highest I've seen rabbit is $15 a pound. And to me, $15 a pound is like if I wanted to buy kangaroo, or I'm trying to think of another. I guess kangaroo is the only one I can think of, because I know that once someone told me about, hey, so-and-so has some kangaroo, and it was a brand. They had some that they needed to offload, and they were selling it for $15 a pound because it came from Australia. And so to me, that's insane, because I can't afford to spend $15 a pound for myself, let alone for 4 big dogs. So rabbit usually is at the high end, $8 to $15 a pound. And I've seen this in other states around the US as well. Where I live, it is around $5 a pound. And I keep a range of $2 to $5 for my budget. $5 is something that I feed a couple times a year, 2, maybe 3 times a year, whereas $2 a pound or less is going to be the more staples in my dog's diet. So rabbit is something that I get if a brand or a farm has excess, and so they're going to let it go for a little cheaper. Or I have it in with someone, so they're going to cut me a deal because I'm buying so much. I mean, I try and buy at least 50 pounds and sometimes up to 100 pounds of a protein at a time. And when I do that, sometimes the farm is willing to say, okay, well, if you're going to buy that much, we'll drop it down to this level. And that's the only way I can afford rabbit. So rabbit is a huge nutritious. I created a nutrient spreadsheet a few years ago where I broke down the nutrients in every protein that I was feeding to my dogs, and compared it to what the NRC. That's probably one of the most respected guidelines that tells us what our dogs need nutrient-wise to basically be healthy animals. So when I looked at rabbit as compared to all of the other proteins, I was blown away at how nutritious it is. So it is in my dog's diet. It's just not going to be something my dogs eat on a monthly basis because I just can't swing it. Rhonda says, I'm wondering if you should also get another young dog, no puppy, to complete my pack or if you should get one. 3 again, says my lab girl passed in October. I'm so sorry you lost your girl. And yeah, I love having tons of dogs in my house. My 4th protein is turkey. Turkey is fan-freaking-tastic because you can get it. What I love about turkey is that after Thanksgiving, you can go to the store, and if they happen to have excess turkeys, they discount them down. And I know tons of people that will go and clear stores out of all the discounted turkeys, take them out, stuff them into the freezer until they need it. It is such a versatile protein. After Thanksgiving, I always ask for the carcass. I bring it home. we have Thanksgiving at my in-laws, and I make bone broth for the dogs. It's super easy. It's great if your dog isn't feeling great and you need to either cook food or just give them something that's easy on their stomach. Ground turkey is just the thing. I love it. Rodrigo doesn't. He has an intolerance to turkey, and so he can't have it. So for a long time, turkey was off the menu. But as I said earlier, if I were to feed everyone based on what Rodrigo needs, it would just be too much. So I still buy turkey. I get it from a local farm. Rodrigo doesn't get it. On the weeks that I feed turkey, Rodrigo gets a different protein and everyone else gets turkey. It is an affordable thing. So if you can afford turkey or chicken and you can get a good source for it, I say go for it, because anywhere that I can cut corners makes it so that I can continue feeding my dogs a healthy diet. The next one is pork. Pork is a controversial protein because a lot of people still think that if you feed raw pork, your dogs will get trichinosis. This is not the case if you're feeding human grade pork. There are rumors going out there that trichinosis has weaseled its way back into the human food system, but I have yet to find anything about that. And I have looked it up, Googled it several times, and cannot find any information that states that we should be worried about pork. So I get my pork through a local raw food co-op. I also have friends who raise their own meat, and they will give me all of the organs, because a lot of the stuff humans don't eat, our dogs do great on. So they give me all of the organs when they butcher their animals. And pork is a big part of my dog's diet. The only thing that I worry about is how salty some pork can be. I don't know about you guys, but have you ever purchased a pack of bacon and it's like, bacon is so good, and you go to cook it and you take a bite and all you can taste is salt? And that's the one thing that concerns me. So it's really important to know where you're sourcing your food. If I can, I get the pork from local farms and from people who are raising their animals. If they have excess, if they have way too much to fit into their freezer, I will be more than happy to buy it and take it off their hands. Emu. So emu is going to be like, I'm going to say emu / alpaca. So emu is insanely expensive where I am. And it wasn't always. It was one of the higher end proteins, but it wasn't too bad. But what happened was it's a very lean meat, and the restaurant industry was like, hey, we can start feeding emu or making meals from emu. And so the price of emu started cranking up. And now it's something that I went from feeding. I used to buy, because I could only buy it once a year. So I bought about 2 or 3 cases of it once a year. Now I buy 1 case of it once a year. And I think the only reason why I was able to get it last year is because of the COVID, and restaurants didn't need or weren't buying the food because they didn't have anyone sitting in their seats. So I was able to get some, but I don't think emu will be something that my dogs get going forward. At least I don't think they will. Oh my God, Justine says Answers is coming to Canada. That's fantastic. I will get to Answers in a second. And then the next thing is alpaca. So yeah, alpaca are such cute animals, and it's horrible to think that I'm sitting here feeding it to my dogs, but I do. We have local alpaca farms, and the animals are raised wonderfully. They're fed beautifully, and I can get really great meat for an affordable price for my dogs. So alpaca is going to be replacing the emu. Chicken. So this is where I'm talking about Answers. So 2 of my dogs have a chicken intolerance, and I usually just don't feed chicken at all. It's like, why even bother? It's just, it has such a bad rap. The omega-6 fatty acids means that I have to really add in the omega-3s to offset it. And it just, I didn't have good luck with chicken back when I fed kibble. So just leave it. I'll just leave it alone. And yes, I did have my dogs tested, and they came back as chicken intolerant. But what I found is a few years ago, I was talking to Billy Hookman, who is the science director for Answers Pet Food. And we were just talking about their processes. And in that conversation, I wondered if my dogs can eat the chicken from Answers. Like, how would Rodrigo do on that? Because it's fermented. So maybe there's something that changes it that makes it so that he can eat it. And so I gave it a chance and it worked. So chicken is back on the menu. And the reason it's back on the menu isn't because of Rodrigo, but it's because of Sydney. When Sydney was diagnosed with cancer, she was already raw fed, but man, I doubled down on her diet and I put her on a keto diet and I ordered tons of answers and started feeding her answers. And she loved it and she did really well on it. She passed away a month and 5 days after her diagnosis. So I still had tons of answers in the freezer. So I continued ordering it for my dogs and I added to their diet. And so Rodrigo does great on the chicken from Answers. So it's still a pre-made raw, so it's not going to be super cheap the way chicken itself would be. But it allows me to add a white meat, a bird to his diet, and he does well on it. I love Answers products. It's really good. The next one is venison. Venison, you would think venison would be cheap. I live in Washington. We have elk. We have deer. We have rabbits. You would think all of that would be inexpensive here. It is not because I don't get my deer here. I don't know any hunters. I know farmers. I don't know hunters. So I'm not able to get venison here locally. I know people who do know hunters and they basically have locked them down like crazy. So no sharing. And they get a ton of meat for a very low cost. I have to order it through my co-op. It's about $5 or so a pound. So I only order it maybe once a year, sometimes twice if the budget's going. But the reason why I like venison is one, because Rodrigo can eat it, and two, because it's a nice, healthy red meat. And I found one day that I was mostly feeding poultry to my dogs. And so I wanted to make sure to get ruminating animals and red meat in there so that they had more nutrients, I guess, are coming to them. Christine says, I have 2 giant dogs and I'm having a hard time affording raw anymore here in Florida. So they only been eating pork and beef organs. Do you have any suggestions to keep my costs down below $50 a week? Wow. Yes. So I'm trying to think of $50 a week. That's $200 a month. Yeah, because that's approximately how much I pay. I would say about $250 a month for 4 dogs. And I have 4, I wouldn't call them giant dogs. They're actually probably more like medium-sized dogs. They're between 60 and 70 pounds. I consider them large though. Anyway, I know that there are co-ops in your area. I don't know which ones they are because I'm only familiar with the one that I'm a member of. But if you go, I'm going to put a link in the comments. If you go to my blog and it's keepthetailwagging.com/co-op and see if you can find a co-op near you, you may have to drive a distance to get to it and pick up food. Also, if you can, ordering in bulk saves a lot of money because when I have to order a little bit at a time, then I'm paying retail. But when I am ordering in bulk, so cases at a time, I'm buying wholesale. And there are all other ways to do it. I mean, you can talk to like your grocery store meat manager and see if you can place orders through your grocery store and place bulk orders and if they offer a discount if you do so. You can go to like Restaurant Depot. I don't know if you have one in your area. I just found out that I have one here and I am stoked. If you have a friend that has a pet store or a restaurant, you have to know someone that can get you a membership to go into this place. But there you can buy a lot of stuff for a low price. Another thing is discount grocery stores. Here we have one called, is it Winco? And we have one called like Grocery Bargain Outlet. And basically you can go here and get stuff for inexpensive and it's fresh. It's not like it's old meat or anything like that. It's fresh food. It's just that it's a lot. So I've been to those to see what they have. Ours don't have as much variety as I've seen other people in other areas of the country are seeing. A friend of mine who lives in Texas, she goes to it's a grocery store outlet. And the stuff that she buys, she takes pictures of her cart and it's astounding, just the variety and the stuff that she buys. And the price tags on these things is insane. It makes me want to fly to Texas just to go shopping there. But there are ways to do it. And once you start finding ways to save money, other ways, you'll start finding other ways to save money, and it becomes easier and easier and easier. But there are ways to do it. You can keep your budget. You may still have to, if you have, because you said you have giant dogs, like if you have mastiffs, for instance, you may have to subsidize their diet with something processed if you can't do entirely raw. But you should be able to not do a hybrid, like half raw, half processed diet. You should be able to do a raw diet. In Florida, you just need to start thinking a little bit outside the box. And it's just one of those things that I didn't get it at first. And I was actually on the verge of going back to kibble when I discovered the local raw food co-op here. And then once I was able to join the co-op, they have a group. Ours has a group on Facebook. Many do. And once you get involved with that, you can start talking to other people and you start learning what other people are doing to save money. And it becomes easier and easier and easier. So I hope that answered your question. 2 more proteins. Sardines, which is one of those, like someone said earlier about not if eggs count, and sardines is another one of those. I don't actually feed a meal that's just sardines or just eggs, but they count as a protein and they do go into my dog's diet. So let's get into it. I like raw sardines the best. They're about this big. I mean, I was stunned the first time I saw sardines in real life because I'm used to canned sardines. And when it's a sardine of that size, I either give it to them whole or just chop it in half using a meat cleaver and toss it in their bowl. And I will give them a whole sardine, like maybe once, maybe twice a week. And it's mostly like when I have them on hand, and I alternate them with other things. So for omega-3 fatty acids, I also like to do salmon oil, and I like to do fermented fish stock. So when I'm adding sardine in the bowl, it's usually to cover the omega-3 fatty acids. So some weeks they'll get 2 a week. Sometimes they won't get any. When it comes to canned sardines, I head off to Walmart, which here is the best price for sardines. And I will get the sardines in water with no salt added. And I basically clear off the shelf. I will have no problem going and finding someone to move one of those ladders, and they climb up there because I'm too short to reach anything. And they just bring me the sardines down. And they keep saying, is that enough? And it's like, no, is there any more up there? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, then I want those too. And I usually clear out the sardines in water and the oysters because I give my dogs oysters as a great source of zinc. But so another place to get sardines is Costco. Costco will have their sardines in olive oil. And yes, olive oil is perfectly fine to feed dogs. And there's not enough olive oil in these cans to really cause an issue. And I ran that by a veterinarian. It's not just my opinion. But I will buy their sardines when they go on sale. And they'll usually go on sale for $7. And I can't remember how many. I think it's either 6 or 7 sardines in a pack. And then you can get a case. And so there's 6 packs in a case. And so I'll just buy a whole case and bring it home. And boom, I'm set for sardines. When it comes to those cans, I usually crack open 1 can and split it between 2 dogs once or twice a week, just depending upon what I have on hand. And then when it comes to eggs, I like to give my dogs eggs. I consider it like nature's multivitamin because it's so many nutrients that go into an egg to help raise the chick. Although that's not the eggs we get, but you get what I mean. And so I give my dogs eggs 3 to 4 days a week. Usually Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are eggs days. And sometimes one day over the weekend, I'll drop an egg in the bowl. Or if I'm between food where I didn't thaw out enough food or didn't thaw it out in time. And so I'm like, and I don't want to fast my dogs, I'll crack in an egg and some sardines and stuff to sort of fill up the bowl. But that rarely happens. So there is a concern that eggs can cause a biotin deficiency. I'm not feeding only the egg whites. I'm feeding the entire egg, and I'm not feeding eggs all day, every day. So I think if I were feeding eggs twice a day, every day, I could be risking it. Sticking to 3 to 4 times a week works great for my dogs. I have my dogs nutrient tested twice a year. No, I don't. Every other year to make sure I'm meeting all their nutrient requirements. The reason why it's every other year is because it costs $200 to $250 per dog to have the nutrient tested. The one that I use, I can't afford that every year or twice a year. So I do it every other year. But that is my list of proteins. When it comes to anything outside of that list, it's tempting. I guess one thing I didn't add on here was like green tripe. I do feed green tripe regularly, but I usually don't consider it a main staple of my dog's diet because 2 of my dogs get loose stool when they have too much diarrhea, but it definitely should be on the list. And I don't feed a lot of beef. And the reason why is because although green beef tripe, let's just pretend that that's separate from beef. The beef that I find, even commercial beef, it seems to have this sticky texture to it that drives me crazy. And I wish it were more like the beef at the grocery store where, whether it's ground or you grind it, it has a nice texture to it. But whenever I bought it from local farms or anything and it's pre-ground for me, it has this sticky texture to it and I don't get it and I don't like it. So I don't feed it. But when it comes to the cost of proteins, I know that it's tempting when you get access to a protein or someone is like trying to get rid of some food out of their freezer. It's tempting to take it on and be like, oh, okay, I need to buy that and give that a try. I have learned not to do that. I just stick strictly to my budget. My dogs are fine. There's no reason for me to try new things. I think if you're new, it's great to try new things. But if you've been doing it for a while, and I've been feeding raw for, I think has it been almost 8 years? Yeah, 8 years in April. I'm fine. I'm fine with what my dogs get, and I'm happy to stick with what they're getting. But for the most part, that's pretty much it. So you guys, thank you so much for sitting here and talking to me about proteins. And to wrap this up and give you my final piece of advice, if you're worried about budget, don't race back to kibble. It's not that, for some people, kibble is going to be part of their dog's diet simply because of sourcing and budget. But if you, like Christine asked here about affording all of these things when you have a lot of dogs or have giant dogs, there is a way. It's just, it will take some clever maneuvering to make it happen in some cases, but there is a way. But if you've tried every single thing to make this work and you cannot make it work, please don't allow anyone to shame you into sticking with something that's not working for you, because there's no point in you going broke in feeding your dog a raw food diet. So you do what works for you and what works for your dogs. It may not be what someone else would do, but you can't worry about that, because ultimately one thing that I've learned is that these are my dogs, and everyone who's going to judge how I feed my dogs, they are not forking over any money to help me pay for things, and they are not going to help me when my dogs have to go to the vet. So I take their advice with a smile and I go about my business and feed my dogs how I want to feed them. So you guys do what's best for your dogs. Try not to stress yourself out about it. As I said at the top, having 10 proteins, and to be honest, I have more than that, is great, but it's not a necessity. You can do this great with 2 or 3 proteins. If I had completely healthy dogs with no food intolerances, my dogs would be eating beef, chicken, and turkey with a few other things thrown in here and there, but I would stick to the basics because that's what's affordable. But you guys do what you need to do. Rhonda asked, do you feed fruits and vegetables to your dogs? If so, what kind? I do. I don't technically feed fruit to my dogs. And I say that because my dogs just get their own fruit. We have our own apple trees and we have berries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. So our dogs will just go and help themselves when the fruit is in season. But I used to go out and pick apples and dehydrate them for my dogs, but I stopped doing that because they just go in. When I'm picking apples, they're there taking the apples out of my baskets and eating them. So I just let them pick their own apples now, and they will pick their own blackberries because apparently I pick them too slowly. So they started picking their own blackberries. Same thing with the blueberries. When Sydney was still alive, she would rip branches off of our blueberry bushes and then just lay down and eat the blueberries off of them. It was kind of cute, but she destroyed quite a few bushes doing that. Anyway, about vegetables, I feed low glycemic vegetables. I do make a veggie mix. You can head off to my blog. I'll put the link in here. And I can't talk and type at the same time. So I hope I got the veggie mix. So I have a veggie mix on my blog, and basically I take, as I'm thinking of the grocery store, parsley, kale, collard greens, broccoli. What else? Did I say spinach? Spinach, sometimes zucchini, some green beans, sometimes asparagus. Those are pretty much the vegetables that I go for. Sometimes I'll get the rainbow peppers, so the red, yellow, orange peppers. I'll add those to the mix. Sometimes I love creating a small flower garden where I'm constantly just going outside and pulling the vegetables. And then what I do is I puree every single thing, put it into glass jars, and put them in the freezer until I need them. I usually add spirulina, chlorella, and hemp seed to my veggie mixes to give them a little bit of oomph. I mostly feed it for the antioxidants and additional fiber because vegetables act as food for gut bacteria. So it increases a healthy gut flora for your dog. So it's a very good thing to add. And I usually just add like maybe a spoonful to each dog's diet. I don't add a ton of it. If one of my dogs needs to lose a little bit of weight, I'll add a little bit more vegetables and take away a little bit of the food, sort of so they feel full, but they can actually be losing weight. But so yeah, long story short. So Christine, they eat the seeds too. Yeah. I spoke to my veterinarian about it, and she said that there's not enough seeds. I have big dogs, so the seeds aren't enough to cause an issue, and they're not eating the apples all day, every day. So I'm not worried about a buildup. The reason why seeds are a problem is because they're a source of cyanide. If I had tiny dogs, I would be a little more concerned. When I remember, I'll bring a knife out with me and I'll core the apples for the dogs and toss them over to them. But for the most part, my veterinarian told me not to worry about it. So I don't. And they've been doing this for years. It's not to say that other people shouldn't be concerned. I think you should do what you feel comfortable with. But over the years, I've just let it be. My dogs have been fine. The deer eat the apples. The coyotes eat the apples too. And everyone is thriving. So I don't worry about it too much. I think if I bought apples and then we're going to share apples with them, I would just core them. But outside, I usually am the last to realize that they're eating apples. And so I'm not really prepared to core them. They don't want to wait either. Impatient little buggers. So I'm going to let you guys go. Enjoy your Tuesday. And thank you so much for joining me today. And I will talk to you later. Bye, guys.